The champagne bubbles were rising in everyone's flutes, mirroring the inflated ego of the woman standing at the head of the banquet table. My mother-in-law, Angela, raised her glass to family sacrifice, looking directly at me with a shark's grin, confident that her secret was buried under layers of guilt and manipulation. She didn't know that the manila envelope taped beneath my chair didn't contain a birthday card. It contained a wiretap transcript that was about to turn her 55th birthday into a federal crime scene. But that moment of vindication was still months away. The story actually began on a gray, drizzling Tuesday morning in October, inside the cramped bedroom that smelled permanently of my neighbor's cigarette smoke. I woke up before the alarm, my body humming with a strange electric energy that had nothing to do with caffeine. The rain was tapping a relentless, gloomy rhythm against the single-pane window, but inside my chest, it felt like high noon in July. I rolled onto my side, careful not to elbow Kendrick. He was deeply asleep, his mouth slightly open, letting out soft, rhythmic snores that usually annoyed me, but today just seemed endearing. We'd been married for 3 years, and for all 3 of those years, we had lived in this fading apartment complex on the edge of the city, where the elevator worked 3 days a week and the hot water was a gamble I usually lost. I slipped my hand under my pillow and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up the dim room with a harsh, blue glow. I squinted, unlocked it, and tapped the banking app icon. I had done this probably 50 times in the last week, but the dopamine hit never diminished. The Face ID wheel spun for a second, and then the numbers appeared. $700,000. I stared at the digits, counting the zeros again just to be sure. It wasn't a glitch. It was real. It was the legacy of my grandmother, Martha, who had passed away 3 months ago. Grandma Martha was a woman who washed and reused aluminum foil. She was a woman who wore the same winter coat for 20 years and walked 3 miles to the grocery store to save bus fare. She had lived a life of aesthetic denial, saving every single penny she ever touched, accumulating a fortune in silence just so she could leave it all to me, her only granddaughter. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. The floorboards creaked loudly, but Kendrick didn't stir. I padded into the kitchen, which was really just a hallway with a stove, and filled the kettle. The apartment was tiny, barely 600 square feet, but I had tried to make it ours. I had painted the walls a soft beige to hide the landlord's questionable taste, and the windowsill was crowded with succulents that were fighting for their lives against the lack of sunlight. While the water heated, I opened the app again. $700,000. It was more than money. It was an exit strategy. It was a down payment on a life where we didn't have to listen to the couple upstairs screaming at 2 a.m. It was a nursery for a baby we were too afraid to afford. "Morning!" a groggy voice rasped behind me. I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. Kendrick was standing in the doorway, scratching his stomach through his old, stretched-out t-shirt. His hair was sticking up in 3 different directions. "You're up early," he mumbled, shuffling toward the small bistro table we had jammed into the corner. He collapsed into the chair, rubbing his eyes with the heels of his hands. "Couldn't sleep," I said, pouring the boiling water over a tea bag. The aroma of Earl Grey filled the small space. I was looking at the accounts again. Kendrick instantly perked up. The sleep vanished from his eyes, replaced by a sharp, eager brightness. He sat up straighter, reaching for his own phone on the table. "I was looking last night too," he said, his voice dropping the morning rasp and taking on a rapid, excited cadence. "Listen, Zara, I found another listing. It just popped up yesterday evening. It's in that new development downtown, the glass tower near the river." I brought the mugs to the table and sat down opposite him. "The one with the rooftop garden?" "Exactly," Kendrick said, swiping through photos on his screen and turning it toward me. "Look at this. 2 bedrooms, a den, floor-to-ceiling windows. The developer is offering a pre-construction discount if we can get the deposit in by the end of the month. It won't be ready for move-in for another year, but the price point is insane for that zip code. I looked at the rendering. It was beautiful. Clean lines, sunlight flooding a spacious living room, a balcony where you could actually fit more than a single chair. It looked like freedom. "We need to run the numbers," I said, trying to be the pragmatic one, though my heart was hammering. $700,000 is a huge down payment, but the mortgage on the balance— "We can cover it," Kendrick interrupted, grabbing my hand across the table. His palm was warm. "With your salary and mine, plus the massive equity we'd have right out of the gate, the bank will throw money at us. Zara, this is it. This is the one." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He looked so hopeful, so ready to start the next chapter. Grandma Martha's sacrifice wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was this look on my husband's face. "Okay," I whispered, a smile breaking through. "Let's go see it. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." 2 days later, on a Saturday, we were standing in the sales center of the Riverview Heights development. The air smelled of fresh coffee and expensive perfume. A sleek scale model of the building sat in the center of the room, illuminated by tiny LED lights. We had spent the last hour with a realtor named Jessica, a woman whose blazer was sharper than my entire wardrobe. She had walked us through the floor plans, showing us samples of the quartz countertops and the hardwood flooring. Now we stood inside the model unit, a full-scale replica of the apartment Kendrick had found online. "This is the master," Jessica said, gesturing to a room that was larger than our entire current living area. "And through here is the ensuite. Heated floors are standard." I walked into the bathroom and stared at the deep, soaking tub. I imagined coming home from work and sinking into hot water without hearing the pipes rattle or worrying that the boiler would give out. It felt like a fantasy, but with $700,000 in the bank, it was a tangible reality. Kendrick appeared in the doorway behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, looking at our reflection in the oversized vanity mirror. "Can you believe this could be ours?" he whispered. "It feels reckless," I admitted, leaning back into him. "It's so much money." "It's an investment," he corrected me gently. "It's security. No more landlords raising the rent. No more mold in the bathroom corners. We'd own this." We walked out of the bedroom and into the second room. It was staged as a home office with a sleek desk and a bookshelf. But as I stepped inside, the office furniture faded away in my mind. The room had a large window facing east, meaning it would get the gentle morning sun. "This would make a perfect nursery," I said, the words slipping out before I could check them. Kendrick went still for a second, then squeezed my hand. We hadn't talked seriously about kids because our financial situation had always been so precarious. But standing here, in this sun-drenched room, the possibility hung in the air like dust motes. "Yeah," Kendrick said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, it really would. We could put the crib right there by the window." We stood there for a long time, just breathing in the silence of the model room. It was quiet here, solid, safe. "The developer needs a 20% deposit to lock in the pre-construction price," Jessica said, appearing in the hallway, interrupting our reverie. She held a glossy folder in her hands. "But because of the special promotion ending this month, if you put down 50%, they knock another 5% off the total purchase price. It's a significant saving. 50%. That would be a huge chunk of the inheritance, but it would also mean a tiny mortgage. We have the liquidity," Kendrick said, sounding more confident than I had ever heard him. "We can do the larger down payment." "Excellent," Jessica beamed. "I can draw up the reservation agreement today. You'd have 3 days to wire the funds." We walked out of the sales center into the cool autumn afternoon feeling like we were floating. The world seemed brighter, crisper. We went to a nearby cafe and sat for 2 hours, drinking overpriced lattes and looking at the floor plan brochures, deciding where we would put the sofa, debating whether to turn the den into a library or a gaming room for Kendrick. I've never been this happy. Kendrick said, tracing the line of the balcony on the paper. Everything is finally coming together. We have the money. We have each other. We have a plan. I nodded, feeling a warm, heavy contentment settle in my chest. It wasn't often that life felt this aligned. Grandma Martha's years of penny pinching had bought us this freedom, and I silently promised her ghost that I wouldn't waste it. We were going to build a beautiful life. We didn't know it then, but that afternoon in the cafe was the high water mark. The tide was about to go out, and it was going to take everything with it. That evening, the atmosphere in our tiny apartment was celebratory. I was making a lemon-roasted chicken, one of the few meals I could cook that didn't taste like cardboard, and Kendrick was picking out a playlist on his phone. The smell of rosemary and garlic filled the kitchen, masking the usual stale odor of the building. We were opening a bottle of wine, a $10 red we had bought to toast our future, when the doorbell buzzed. It was a harsh, jarring sound that made both of us jump. We weren't expecting anyone. Our friends usually texted before coming over, and we didn't order takeout. Kendrick and I exchanged a confused look. "Did you order something from Amazon?" he asked, setting the wine opener down. "No," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Maybe it's the landlord?" Kendrick walked to the door, peering through the peephole. His posture immediately stiffened. He unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open. "Mom," he said, his voice pitching up in surprise. "What happened?" I stepped out of the kitchenette, drying my hands nervously. Standing in our hallway was Angela Dubois, my mother-in-law, and she looked like she had just walked out of a car wreck. Angela was usually a woman of immense, terrifying poise. She was the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and judged you for wearing sweatpants in your own home. But tonight, she was a wreck. Her face was blotchy and flushed, her eyes were swollen, almost shut, and she was clutching a crumpled tissue in her hand like a lifeline. She was wearing a raincoat that was buttoned wrong, and her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was loose and messy. "Oh, Kendrick," she sobbed, the sound wet and broken. "I didn't know where else to go." She practically collapsed into his arms. Kendrick looked panicked, wrapping his arms around her and guiding her inside. "It's okay, Mom. Come in, sit down," he said, ushering her toward our worn-out sofa. I rushed over, my heart rate spiking. Seeing a strong, cold woman break down is deeply unsettling. It triggers a primal alarm bell. "Angela, what's wrong?" I asked, kneeling beside the sofa as she sank into the cushions. "Is it your blood pressure? Do you need water?" She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving with dramatic, wrenching sobs. "It's not me," she wailed, her voice muffled by her palms. Oh God, I can't even say it." Kendrick sat next to her, rubbing her back, looking at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Mom, you have to tell us. Who is it? Is it Dad?" Angela shook her head violently. She took a deep, ragged breath, lowered her hands, and looked at Kendrick with eyes that were swimming in tears. "It's Sabrina," she whispered. "My cousin Sabrina." I frowned slightly. I knew the name, but vaguely. Sabrina lived 3 states away. I think I had met her once at our wedding, a quiet woman in a floral dress. "What about Sabrina?" Kendrick asked gently. "She's dying," Angela choked out, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "She's dying, Kendrick, and it's all my fault." The room went silent save for the hum of the refrigerator. The smell of the roasting chicken suddenly felt nauseating. I stood up slowly, a cold feeling creeping up the back of my neck. "What do you mean she's dying?" Kendrick asked, his voice trembling. "What happened?" Angela blew her nose loudly into the crumpled tissue. She took a moment to compose herself, or at least to appear like she was trying to. When she spoke, her voice was shaky, but clear. "Oncology," she said. "Aggressive, stage 3, it's everywhere." I felt my stomach clench. Cancer. It was the magic word that shut down all skepticism. You don't question cancer. "Oh my God," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." The doctors, they found it late, Angela continued, grabbing Kendrick's hand and squeezing it until her knuckles turned white. They say she needs immediate surgery, emergency intervention. If she doesn't have the operation within the month, the tumors will press on her spine and her heart. She won't make it to Christmas. Okay, Kendrick said, nodding rapidly, trying to be the problem solver. Okay, so she gets the surgery. Where is she? Is she at the hospital now? That's the problem, Angela cried out, her voice rising to a shriek. The insurance, they denied it. They're calling it a pre-existing condition because of some test she had 5 years ago. It's criminal, Kendrick. They are letting her die because of paperwork. She looked from Kendrick to me, her eyes wild and desperate. The public hospital has a 6-month waiting list, she sobbed. 6 months. She has 4 weeks, maybe 5. We have to go private. There's a specialist in Switzerland who can do it, who has a slot open next week, but it's cash up front. They won't lift a scalpel without the payment. How much? Kendrick asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and inevitable. Angela looked down at her lap. She took a shuddering breath. $700,000. The number hit me like a physical slap. The room seemed to tilt. 700,000. Exactly. Not 600. Not 1,000,000. 700,000. I stood frozen near the kitchen island. A cold chill washed over me. It was too precise. Angela knew about the inheritance. Of course she knew. Kendrick told her everything. He had probably called her the day the money hit the account, bragging about how we were set for life. I looked at Kendrick. He wasn't doing the math. He was just looking at his mother with horror and sympathy. 700,000, Kendrick repeated, dazed. That's a lot of money. I've called everyone. Angela wept, the tears flowing freely again. I called Julian. I called your aunts. Nobody has that kind of liquidity. I tried to take a loan against the house, but the bank said it would take 6 weeks to process. 6 weeks is too late. Sabrina will be dead by then. She looked up, locking eyes with me for the first time since she sat down. Her gaze was wet and pleading, but underneath the tears, I saw something sharp, something expectant. I don't know what to do, she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly. I'm watching my own flesh and blood die because I'm poor, because I failed her. Silence stretched between us. It was a thick, suffocating silence. Kendrick turned his head slowly and looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of panic and hope. I knew exactly what he was thinking. I knew exactly what he was about to ask. No, I said. It came out softer than I intended, barely a breath. Kendrick stood up. Zara. No, I said again, louder this time, stepping back. Kendrick, no, that's our house. That's our future. It's a life, Kendrick's voice cracked. It's my cousin's life. I don't even know her, I blurted out, and immediately regretted how callous it sounded, but the panic was rising in my throat. Angela, surely there are other ways. Payment plans. GoFundMe. Something. I told you, Angela cried, standing up now, swaying slightly as if she might faint. There is no time. They need the wire transfer this week to book the operating theater. If we miss the window, the surgeon goes on sabbatical. She dies, Zara. She simply dies. She took a step toward me, reaching out with her cold, clammy hands to grab mine. Please, she begged, looking deep into my eyes. I know it's your grandmother's money. I know you have plans. But can you really live in a fancy condo knowing that your walls are paid for with Sabrina's blood? I pulled my hands away from hers, trembling. That is not fair, I said, my voice shaking. You cannot put that on me. I'm not putting it on you. I'm stating the facts, Angela shouted, dropping the weak victim act for a split second before recovering it. I am desperate, Zara. I am begging you. Kendrick, say something. I looked at my husband, desperate for him to be the partner who protected our interests. But Kendrick wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his mother, seeing the woman who raised him crumbling in pain. He turned to me, and his face was hard, a stranger's face. "Zara, we have the money sitting there," he said, his voice low and intense. "We were just looking at it this morning. It's right there." "It's for the house," I argued, feeling tears prick my own eyes now. "It's for the baby we talked about. It's Grandma Martha's life savings. She didn't save for 50 years to pay for this. She saved it for family," Kendrick yelled, startling me. "Isn't that what you always said, that she did it for family? Well, Sabrina is family. She is blood. Does that mean nothing to you?" "I've met her one time," I screamed back. "She lives in Ohio. We don't even send Christmas cards." "So her life is worth less because she lives in Ohio?" Kendrick stepped closer to me, looming over me. "Listen to yourself. You sound like a monster. You are literally weighing a human life against a balcony and a heated floor." "That's not what I'm doing," I protested, backing up until I hit the kitchen counter. "I'm saying this is suspicious, Kendrick. The exact amount, immediately after we get it, cash up front in Switzerland, it sounds crazy." "Are you calling my mother a liar?" Kendrick hissed. I just think we need to verify." "Verify what?" Angela interjected, wailing. "You want to see her death certificate? Is that what it will take? You want me to bring her corpse here so you can verify it?" She collapsed back onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably into a cushion. My own daughter-in-law. So cold. So heartless. Kendrick looked at his mother, then turned back to me with pure disgust in his eyes. "I didn't know you were this greedy," he spat. "I really didn't. I thought you were a good person, Zara." That stung more than the shouting. "I am a good person." "Then prove it," he shouted. "Help her. Mom isn't asking for a gift. She's asking for a loan. Right, Mom?" "Of course." Angela looked up, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. "Of course it's a loan. I would never ask you to give it to me. I will pay it back, every single dime." "How?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Angela, you're retired. How are you going to pay back $700,000? She stood up and walked over to me, her face a mask of solemn determination. "I am selling the Sea Island lot," she said firmly. I blinked. I knew Angela's family had some ancestral land on the coast, but it had always been vague. "The what?" "The property on the Sea Islands," she insisted. "It's been in the family for 3 generations. I have a buyer lined up, a developer from Atlanta. The deal is in the final stages of closing. The paperwork is just slow because of the probate court, but the money is coming. It's guaranteed." "How much is it selling for?" Kendrick asked. $850,000, Angela lied, or at least I suspected she lied, but she said it with such conviction. "I will have the check in my hand in 6 weeks, 2 months maximum. I swear it on my life. I swear it on Kendrick's life." She grabbed my shoulders. "Zara, please, lend me the money for 2 months. Just to bridge the gap until the land sells. You save Sabrina's life, and in 8 weeks you get your money back and you buy your condo. Everyone wins. Please, don't let her die." I looked at Kendrick. He was watching me with held breath, his eyes pleading, desperate for me to do the right thing. I looked at Angela, who was trembling, clutching my arms. I felt trapped, physically, emotionally trapped. If I said no, Sabrina, allegedly, dies, and I am the murderer. My marriage would never recover. Kendrick would look at me every day and see the woman who let his cousin die for a down payment. But if I said yes, every instinct in my body was screaming danger. It felt like jumping off a cliff in the dark. 2 months? I asked, my voice barely audible. 2 months, Angela promised, nodding vigorously. Maybe sooner. The lawyer said the closing could happen by mid-November. "And you have a buyer? It's for sure?" "It is a done deal," she insisted. "The contract is drafted. We are just waiting on the title search." I closed my eyes. I thought of the nursery with the sunlight. I thought of Grandma Martha eating generic brand soup. And then I thought of Kendrick walking out the door because he couldn't look at me anymore. I was exhausted. I was tired of the shouting, the tears, the pressure. I just wanted the noise to stop. "Okay," I breathed out. The word hung in the air. "Okay?" Kendrick asked, hope flooding his face. "Okay," I repeated, opening my eyes. "We'll do it." Angela let out a cry of joy that sounded more like a shriek. She threw her arms around me, crushing me in a hug that smelled of stale powder and desperation. "Oh, thank you, you angel, you savior," she cried into my ear. Her body was shaking, but her grip was iron tight. "I will never forget this. Never. You are saving our family." Kendrick came over and wrapped his arms around both of us. "I knew it," he whispered, kissing the top of my head. "I knew you'd do the right thing, Zara. I love you so much." I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, sandwiched between my husband and his mother, feeling their relief wash over them. But I didn't feel relief. I felt a heavy, cold stone settle in the bottom of my stomach. "We need to do the transfer tonight," Angela said, pulling back and wiping her face, her business mode suddenly re-engaging. "The banks in Switzerland open in a few hours." "We can do it now," Kendrick said, pulling out his phone. "Zara has the authorization." I nodded numbly. I walked over to the table where my phone still sat, the screen dark. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it had this morning. "I'll write you an IOU," Angela said, rummaging in her purse and pulling out a notepad and a pen. "Just so everything is proper. I, Angela Dubois, promise to repay..." She scribbled furiously while I unlocked my phone. I watched her hand move. It seemed so performative. So unnecessary if she was telling the truth, and so useless if she wasn't. I looked at the banking app. $700,000. 2 months, I whispered to myself. Just 2 months. I had no idea I was signing away my life. I sat at the kitchen table, my phone flat on the sticky surface. The screen glowed with the banking interface, a clean white box demanding numbers that would change our lives forever. "Okay, read it to me again," I said, my voice sounding hollow, like I was speaking from inside a tin can. Angela was hovering over my shoulder, smelling of lavender and old anxiety. She held a slip of paper with the wire instructions. "It's a Swiss IBAN," she said, pointing a manicured nail at the screen. "Starts with CH, then 5009. I typed the characters slowly. CH 5009. "Beneficiary name?" I asked. "Dr. Heinrich Weber," Angela recited. "Zurich Medical Center." My thumb hovered over the amount field. This was the part that made my chest feel tight, as if a belt were being cinched around my ribs. I tapped the box. The cursor blinked, waiting. I typed a 7, then a 0, another 0, comma, 0, 0, 0, $700,000. "That's it," Kendrick whispered from the other side of the table. He was watching the phone like it was a bomb defusal. "Just hit send, babe. Let's save her." I looked at the transfer button. It was green, innocuous, a pixelated rectangle that controlled my grandmother's entire life's work. My finger trembled, a physical, uncontrollable shake. "Zara, darling," Angela cooed, placing a hand on my shoulder. Her palm was heavy. "Think of Sabrina. Think of her children." I didn't know Sabrina had children. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I closed my eyes for a split second, seeing the sunlit nursery in the condo one last time, and then I forced my eyes open and tapped the glass. Processing. The little wheel spun. The little... 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Transfer complete. New balance, $0.00. The air left my lungs. It was gone. It wasn't a number anymore. It was air. It was nothing. "Oh, thank God," Angela shrieked, clapping her hands together. "Thank God you did it!" She leaned down and kissed my cheek, her lips wet and cold. I didn't move. I stared at the 0. It looked accusing. Angela didn't stay long after the money was sent. Her devastation miraculously evaporated, replaced by a frantic, business-like energy. "I have to go call the clinic," she said, fastening her raincoat with steady hands. "I have to send them the confirmation number immediately so they can book the operating theater for Monday." She stopped at the door and turned back to us. Kendrick was standing there, beaming, looking like he had just pulled a child from a burning building. "I love you both," Angela said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "You are good people, the best people. I will have the lawyer draft the repayment schedule as soon as the Sea Island sale closes. 2 months, I promise." "We know, Mom," Kendrick said. "Go, save Sabrina." The door clicked shut. The lock turned. The silence that followed was heavy. The apartment felt instantly smaller, the beige walls closing in. The smell of the roasted chicken had turned cold and greasy. Kendrick turned to me and wrapped me in a bear hug, lifting me slightly off the floor. "I am so proud of you," he murmured into my neck. "You have no idea. That was the hardest thing you've ever done, and you did it. You're a hero, Zara." I stood there, limp in his arms, staring over his shoulder at the piece of notebook paper left on the table. The IOU, Angela's handwriting was looped and fancy, written in blue ink. "I, Angela Dubois, promise to repay." It looked like a grocery list. It looked like a joke. "Put me down, Kendrick," I said quietly. He set me down, pulling back to look at my face. He was still riding the high of moral superiority. "What's wrong? You're in shock. It's the adrenaline." "I just gave away everything," I said, my voice flat. "We have nothing, Kendrick. If the car breaks down tomorrow, we can't fix it. If I lose my job, we can't pay rent." "It's temporary," he insisted, grabbing my shoulders and giving me a little shake. 60 days. That's nothing. It's a blip. And in exchange, a woman gets to live. How can you not feel good about that?" "I don't know." I walked over to the table and picked up the IOU. The paper felt thin and cheap. "I just feel robbed." "Don't use that word." Kendrick's face darkened. "Nobody robbed you. You gave a loan. There is a difference." I folded the paper and shoved it into the back pocket of my jeans. "I hope you're right," I said. "God, I hope you're right." The first 30 days were a study in cognitive dissonance. Kendrick was living in a fantasy world where we were rich philanthropists who were merely temporarily liquid challenged. I was living in a constant state of low-grade nausea. Every morning I checked the banking app. 0, 0, 0. Every evening, Kendrick wanted to talk about the condo. It was a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the transfer. I was sitting on the sofa, laptop open, trying to budget our paychecks to cover the credit card bill. Kendrick walked in from the bedroom holding a fabric swatch he had ordered online. "What do you think of this for the curtains in the master?" he asked, holding up a square of navy blue velvet. "It's called Midnight Ocean. I think it would look killer against the gray walls in the new place." I looked at the velvet. It looked expensive. "Kendrick," I said, not looking up from my spreadsheet, "that fabric is $80 a yard." "So?" He sat down next to me, draping the swatch over his knee. "We only need like 10 yards. It's an investment." "We don't have the condo yet," I reminded him, closing the laptop with a snap. "We don't even have the down payment anymore." "We will in 3 weeks," he said, dismissing my worry with a wave of his hand. "Mom said the closing is on track. Why are you being such a downer? Can't we just enjoy the planning phase?" "I talked to Jessica today," I lied. I hadn't talked to the realtor, but I needed to ground him. She asked if we were still interested. "And you told her yes, right?" Kendrick looked at me sharply. "I told her we were working on the financing," I said. "But the promotion ends next week, Kendrick. We're going to lose the discount." "We can ask them to extend it," he said confidently. "Once they know the situation, that we saved a life, they'll understand. People are good, Zara." I looked at my husband, at his open, trusting face. He believed it. He really believed that the world ran on karma and good intentions. "Have you heard from Angela?" I asked. "About Sabrina?" "Oh, yeah." Kendrick nodded, getting up to get a glass of water. "She said the surgery went great. Sabrina is recovering in a chalet near the clinic. The doctors are amazed." "Can I talk to her?" I asked. Kendrick froze with his hand on the fridge door. "Who?" "Sabrina." "Yes, I paid for her life. I'd like to hear her voice. Maybe see a picture of her recovery?" "She's recovering from major surgery, Zara," Kendrick scolded, pulling out the water pitcher. "She's weak. She can't be taking video calls just to satisfy your skepticism. Let her rest." He poured the water, turning his back to me. "You're being weird about this. Just trust the process." The 30-day mark arrived. The special discount on the condo expired. We let it go without a word, though Kendrick spent 2 days sulking, blaming corporate greed rather than our lack of funds. On day 35, I decided I was done waiting for updates through Kendrick. I waited until he was in the shower, the sound of the water masking my voice, and I dialed Angela's number. It rang 4 times. I was about to hang up when she answered. "Hello?" Her voice was bright, cheerful, not the voice of a woman burdened by debt or a dying cousin. "Hi, Angela, it's Zara." There was a tiny pause, a microsecond of recalibration. "Zara, darling, how are you? How are you holding up with this dreadful rain?" "I'm fine," I said, cutting through the small talk. "I'm calling about the Sea Island sale. It's been over a month. I wanted to know if you have a closing date yet." "Oh, the sale," she sighed, the cheerfulness deflating into a practiced weariness. "It is a nightmare, darling. A total nightmare." "What does that mean?" I gripped the phone tighter. "The county clerk," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They lost the physical file for the title search. Can you believe that? In 2025? They can't find the paper deed from 1980. The buyer is furious. I'm furious, but what can we do?" "So, what? The sale is off?" My heart hammered against my ribs. No, not off," she insisted quickly. "Just delayed. The lawyer has to file a motion to reconstruct the title. It's a formality, really, but it takes time. The bureaucracy is stifling." "How much time, Angela?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need that money. We're losing the condo options." I know, she soothed. "Believe me, I want to pay you back more than anything. I can't sleep at night thinking about it, but we just have to be patient. Maybe another month, 6 weeks at the outside?" "Another month?" I felt the heat rising in my face. "You swore 2 months maximum. Now we're looking at 3 or 4? "I can't control the government, Zara," she snapped, her tone suddenly sharp. "I am doing everything I can. Why are you pressuring me? Do you think I'm enjoying this?" "I think $700,000 is a lot of money to be casual about," I said. "I am not being casual," she shouted. "I am being realistic. You will get your money. Just wait." She hung up. I stared at the phone, listening to the silence. The shower turned off in the bathroom. I quickly deleted the call from my history. 2 days later, the other shoe dropped. I was at work, sitting in my cubicle, pretending to analyze a spreadsheet while actually Googling Sea Island land deed lookup, when my cell phone buzzed. It was Jessica, the realtor. I debated ignoring it. I knew what she wanted, but cowardice wasn't going to help. I answered. "Hi, Jessica." "Hi, Zara." Her voice was professionally chipper, but with an edge of urgency. "Listen, I have some bad news and some good news. The developer is releasing the unit you wanted back to the market tomorrow morning." "That's the bad news." "Okay," I said, closing my eyes. "The good news is," she continued, "I have a buyer who is offering cash. But since you have the reservation, you have the right of first refusal. If you can wire the deposit by 5 p.m. today, it's yours. I convinced them to honor the original price, minus the discount." 5 p.m. today. It was currently 2:15. Jessica, I started, my voice cracking. I cleared my throat. We can't. You can't do the wire today? She asked. We could maybe push it to tomorrow morning if I beg. No, I said, tears stinging my eyes. I mean, we don't have the money. The financing fell through. We have to withdraw. The silence on the other end was excruciating. It was the sound of a commission check evaporating. Oh, Jessica said. Her voice was suddenly cool, detached. I see. That is unfortunate. You seemed so ready. We were, I whispered. Things changed. Well, I'll let the developer know, she said briskly. If your situation changes in 6 months, give me a call. Good luck, Zara. Click. I lowered the phone. It was done. The nursery with the sunlight, the balcony, the heated floors, gone. Sold to someone else with cash in hand. Someone who didn't have a lying mother-in-law. I put my head down on my desk and let out a single shuddering breath. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was angry. I drove home in a daze. When I walked into the apartment, Kendrick was in the living room playing a video game. The noise of explosions and gunfire filled the small space. Turn it off, I said, dropping my keys on the table. Kendrick looked up, surprised by my tone. He paused the game. Hey, rough day? Jessica called, I said, standing in the middle of the room, my coat still on. We lost the condo. It's gone. Sold to someone else. Kendrick's face fell. He put the controller down slowly. What? Why didn't you tell them to wait? Mom said the money is coming. They couldn't wait, Kendrick, I shouted, the anger finally boiling over. It's been 6 weeks. The world doesn't stop because your mother is waiting on paperwork. Okay, calm down, he said, standing up and raising his hands. So we lost that specific unit. There will be others. Why are you yelling? Because there won't be others, I screamed. Not like that. Not at that price. We missed the market, Kendrick. We missed our chance because we gave our down payment to a woman who is ghosting us. She is not ghosting us, Kendrick shouted back, his face turning red. She talked to me yesterday. She's stressed, Zara. The county lost the files. It's not her fault. Do you actually believe that? I stepped closer to him. Do you really believe that a county clerk lost a file in the year 2025, and that's the only reason we don't have our money? Why would she lie? Kendrick pleaded. She's my mother. She used the money to save Sabrina. Would you rather we had the condo and Sabrina was in a box in the ground? Is that what you want? I want proof, I yelled. I want to see a hospital bill. I want to talk to Sabrina. I want to see a sale contract for this invisible land. You are obsessed. Kendrick threw his hands up, looking at me with genuine revulsion. You are obsessed with the money. It's sick, Zara. It makes you look ugly. You care more about your bank balance than you do about family. I care about us, I argued, tears finally spilling over. I care about our family, the one we were supposed to start in that house. We can't start a family if you're going to be this selfish, Kendrick said coldly. The words hit me like a physical blow. He walked past me, grabbing his jacket. Where are you going? I asked, wiping my face. I'm going for a walk, he said, opening the door. I can't be around this energy right now. You need to check yourself, Zara. You really do. He slammed the door. I stood alone in the hallway, the echo of the slam vibrating in the floorboards. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where we had taped the floor plan of the condo. I walked over and ripped the tape off, crumpling the paper into a tight ball. He called me selfish. He called me ugly. I looked at the phone in my hand. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't see. If I wanted my life back, I was going to have to stop waiting for permission. I was going to have to get the proof myself. Month 3 arrived with the subtle cruelty of a calendar page turning. The leaves outside had turned to brown mush, mirroring the state of my marriage. I sat in my car during my lunch break, the engine idling to keep the heater running. I was parked behind the loading dock of my office building, a place where I could scream if I needed to. I stared at my phone. I had called Angela 5 times in the last week. She had answered 0 times. I dialed again. It rang. 1, 2, 3. Hello? Her voice was weak, breathless. It was a performance I was beginning to recognize. Angela, it's Zara, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I need an update. Oh, Zara, she wheezed. I can barely speak. My blood pressure. It was 180/100 this morning. The doctor says I'm a stroke risk. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was terrified to realize I didn't mean it. But I need to know about the money. It has been 90 days. The promissory note expired a month ago. Money, 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 she groaned. Is that all you think about? I am lying here with a cold compress on my head, afraid my heart is going to explode, and you are harassing me about money. I am not harassing you, I said, gripping the steering wheel. I am asking for the repayment of a loan that you swore would take 8 weeks. Where is the Sea Island sale? The buyer walked away, she cried out, her voice suddenly regaining its strength before dipping back into the sick register. He got tired of waiting for the county. He pulled out. My stomach dropped. He pulled out? So there is no sale? I am looking for another buyer, she said quickly. I have a lead, a developer from Savannah, but you have to give me time. Stress kills, Zara. If I die, you get nothing. Is that what you want? I want the truth, I said. And I want to talk to Sabrina. Give me her number, Angela. I want to verify she's okay. How dare you, she hissed. After everything I've done, you question my integrity? I am hanging up now. My head is splitting. The line went dead. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. It bounced off the upholstery and hit the floor mat. I sat there staring at the brick wall of the warehouse, feeling a cold, hard rage crystallize in my chest. She was lying. I didn't know how or about what exactly, but the buyer walking away was too convenient. 4 days later, on a Saturday, I was at the Save-A-Lot 3 blocks from our apartment. We used to shop at Whole Foods. Now, with our credit cards maxed out to cover living expenses, I was buying generic pasta and dented cans of beans. I was standing in the checkout line, staring at a tabloid cover, when a voice cut through the ambient noise of the store. I told her it was a pyramid scheme, but you know Angela. I froze. The name hung in the air. I turned my head slowly, peering around a display of chewing gum. Standing in the next lane were 2 women. One was a stranger. The other was Brenda, Angela's best friend. I had seen her at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She was wearing a bright red coat and unloading cat food onto the belt. She gave him how much? The stranger asked, picking up a gallon of milk. 700 grand, Brenda said, lowering her voice, but not enough. Can you believe it? She badgered her son and that poor wife of his into handing over their inheritance, told them some sob story about a sick cousin. My blood ran cold. The checkout line, the cashier, the beeping scanner, everything faded into a white noise tunnel. That's evil, the stranger gasped. It's worse, Brenda continued, shaking her head. She gave every penny to her brother Julian. You know, the one who thinks he's an entrepreneur? He wanted to start some high-end crypto mining farm in a warehouse downtown, guaranteed triple returns in a month. Let me guess, the stranger said. It tanked? Flopped immediately, Brenda snorted. Julian bought a bunch of outdated equipment from a scammer in Miami. The machines don't even turn on. The money is gone, poof. And now Angela is running around trying to sell her jewelry to pay the interest on her own credit cards. I felt the can of beans slip from my hand. It hit the linoleum floor with a loud thud. Brenda jumped and looked over. Her eyes locked with mine. Her face went from gossipy delight to absolute horror in a split second. Zara, she whispered. I didn't say a word. I left the pasta and the beans on the conveyor belt. I turned around and walked out of the store, my legs moving automatically. I walked past the automatic doors into the parking lot and got into my car. I didn't even put my seatbelt on. I just drove. I burst into the apartment. Kendrick was sitting at the bistro table staring at a piece of paper. He looked up as the door slammed behind me. We have a problem, he said, holding up the paper. The mechanic called. The transmission on the Honda is shot. It's going to cost $1,200 to fix. We don't have $1,200, Zara. We don't have $700,000, I screamed, throwing my keys on the counter. Because your mother gave it to Julian. Kendrick blinked, the mechanic bill forgotten. What? What are you talking about? I was at the store, I said, pacing back and forth, my hands shaking. I saw Brenda, Angela's friend. She didn't see me at first. She was telling someone the whole story, Kendrick. There is no Sabrina. There was no cancer. There is no Swiss clinic. Stop. Kendrick stood up. It was a lie, I continued, pointing a finger at his chest. She took our money and gave it to Julian for a crypto mining business, a business that failed. The money is gone, Kendrick. It's gone. You're hysterical, Kendrick said, his face flushing red. You're listening to gossip in a grocery store checkout line? That's your source? Brenda knows everything, I yelled. She looked me in the eye and turned white. She knew she got caught. Brenda is a gossip monger who hates my mother, Kendrick argued, slamming his hand on the table. She's probably jealous. Mom would never do that, never. She loves us. Call her, I challenged him. Pick up the phone right now, put it on speaker. Ask her about Julian. Kendrick looked at his phone, then back at me. I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the fear. Deep down, he knew something was wrong, but admitting it meant admitting he had destroyed our lives. I am not going to interrogate my mother based on something you overheard while buying beans, he said, his voice trembling. It's disrespectful. Disrespectful? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. She stole our future. We can't fix the car, Kendrick. We can't pay rent, and she is protecting her brother's failed scam. I'm done with this conversation, Kendrick said, grabbing his jacket. I'm going to go deal with the car, alone, since you're clearly having a breakdown. He walked out, again. This time, I didn't cry. I walked over to the door and locked it. Then I walked to the computer. If Kendrick wouldn't look at the truth, I would shove it down his throat. I sat down at my laptop and opened my text history. I scrolled back 3 months. I found the thread with Angela. Angela. My heart is breaking for Sabrina. Thank you for even considering helping. Screenshot. Angela. I promise on my life 2 months max. The land sale is guaranteed. Screenshot. I opened the photo gallery on my phone and found the picture I had surreptitiously taken of the IOU that night in the kitchen. Loan for medical emergency. Repayment within 60 days. I created a folder on my desktop named Evidence. I dragged everything into it. Then I started searching for Julian Dubois. I knew him vaguely, the cool uncle who always wore sunglasses indoors and drove leased cars he couldn't afford. I didn't have him on Facebook, but his profile was public. Of course it was. Narcissists don't understand privacy settings. I scrolled down. September, August, July. There it was. October 4th. 2 days after we wired the money. A photo of Julian standing in a warehouse surrounded by racks of server equipment that looked dusty and used. He was giving a thumbs up. Caption. Big moves coming. Just secured the seed capital for the mining farm. To the moon. Crypto King entrepreneur family first. Family first, I whispered, reading the hashtag. I scrolled down to the comments. Angela Dubois. So proud of you, brother. This is going to be huge. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely use the mouse. She knew. She commented on it. I took a screenshot. I kept scrolling. November 15th. A text post from Julian. Status. Setbacks are just setups for comebacks. Supply chain issues slowing us down. Haters gonna hate. December 1st. A picture of Julian on a beach in Miami with a cocktail. Caption. Needed a mental health break. The grind never stops, but warriors need rest. He was on vacation. With our money. While we were eating generic beans and couldn't fix our transmission. I took screenshots of everything. The timeline was undeniable. The money went out from us on October 2nd. Julian secured capital on October 4th. I had the smoking gun, but I needed the confession. I needed an app. I downloaded a call recorder on my phone. I tested it by calling the weather service. It worked perfectly. I sat at the kitchen table. It was 7 p.m. Kendrick wasn't home yet. I dialed Angela. She didn't answer. I waited 5 minutes and dialed again. No answer. I sent a text. Angela, I know about Julian. Brenda told me everything. I'm going to the police in 1 hour unless you explain. My phone rang 30 seconds later. I hit record. Then I answered. You listen to me. Angela's voice was a low growl. The sick, weak woman was gone. You keep your mouth shut. So it's true, I said, my voice steady. You gave him the money. He is brilliant, Angela shouted. He had a foolproof plan. Bitcoin is the future, Zara. If you weren't so narrow-minded, you would understand. He was going to triple the money. We were all going to be rich. I was doing this for you. You told us it was for cancer surgery, I said. You lied about a dying woman. It was a metaphor, she shrieked. Poverty is a cancer. I was trying to cure our poverty. And Julian, he just had bad luck. The equipment was faulty. It's not his fault. Where is the money now, Angela? I asked. Is there anything left? He spent it on the setup and the lease. And, well, you have to spend money to make money. It's all gone? It's an investment, she insisted. It will pay off eventually. You just have to be patient. But if you go to the police... Zara, think about Kendrick. Think about the family shame. Do you really want to arrest your husband's mother? I want my $700,000, I said. I can't give you what I don't have, she screamed. Stop squeezing blood from a stone, you ungrateful little... I hung up. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. I sat back in the chair and looked at the wall. I felt a strange sense of calm. The confusion was gone. The gaslighting was over. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a victim of a crime. And now, I was the prosecutor. The lock tumbled and the door creaked open. Kendrick walked in, looking like he had aged 10 years in 2 hours. His shoulders were slumped, and he smelled faintly of exhaust fumes and cheap coffee. It's the transmission, he said, dropping his keys into the bowl. $1,200. I had to put it on the emergency credit card. We have $40 left in available credit, Zara. 40. He walked into the kitchen, rubbing his face with his grease-stained hands. He looked at me, sitting at the table with my laptop closed and my phone face down. Are you still doing this? He asked, his voice weary. Are you still sulking about the grocery store gossip? Sit down, Kendrick, I said. My voice was calm, unnaturally calm. I don't want to sit down. I want to go to bed and forget this day happened. Sit down, I repeated. It wasn't a request. He paused, looking at the expression on my face. It must have scared him, because he pulled out a chair and sat. What? He snapped. I didn't say a word. I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and pressed play. Angela's voice filled the kitchen, tinny but unmistakable. You listen to me. You keep your mouth shut. Kendrick's eyes widened. He stared at the phone. It was a metaphor. Poverty is a cancer. I was trying to cure our poverty. Kendrick's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He looked like he had been struck by a physical blow. He spent it on the setup and the lease, and, well, you have to spend money to make money. I can't give you what I don't have. Stop squeezing blood from a stone. I let the recording play until the dial tone, then I stopped it. The silence in the kitchen was heavier than the air before a tornado. The refrigerator hummed. The faucet dripped once. She admitted it, I said softly. No cancer, no Switzerland, just Julian and a crypto farm. Kendrick stared at the table. His face was pale, drained of blood. He took a shallow breath. He started, then stopped. She was trying to help us. I felt my jaw drop. What? She was trying to multiply the money. Kendrick said, looking up at me. His eyes were swimming with panic, desperate to find a narrative that didn't make his mother a monster. She wanted us to be rich, Zara. She made a bad investment. That's different from stealing. She lied about a dying woman, Kendrick. She scammed us. She was desperate, he yelled, slamming his hand on the table. She made a mistake, a huge mistake, but she's my mother. What do you want me to do? Call the cops? Put her in handcuffs? Yes, I screamed back. That is exactly what I want. I want our money back. She doesn't have it, Kendrick pleaded, tears spilling down his face now. You heard her. It's gone. If we sue her, we bankrupt her. She loses her house, she loses her pension, she'll be on the street. Is that what you want? To see my mother homeless? I looked at him. I looked at the man I had married, the man I wanted to have children with, and I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me, seeing only his mother's potential suffering. He didn't care that we were broke. He didn't care that I was betrayed. So that's it? I asked, my voice turning ice cold. We just eat it? We lose $700,000 and say, "It's okay, Mom?" We figure it out, he sobbed. We work extra shifts. We rebuild. But we don't destroy family. We can't. I stood up slowly. My legs felt steady. My hands weren't shaking anymore. You're right, I said. Kendrick looked up, hope flooding his face. I am. We can't destroy family, I said, but you need to understand something, Kendrick. You just chose your family, and it isn't me. What? No, baby, don't say that. He reached for my hand. I pulled back. You would rather I work myself to death to pay off your mother's fraud than hold her accountable. You would rather we lose our future than make her uncomfortable. It's not about comfort, it's about survival. No, I said, walking to the bedroom door. It's about loyalty, and you don't have any to me. I walked into the bedroom. I grabbed a pillow and the duvet from the bed. What are you doing? Kendrick followed me, panicked. I'm sleeping in the guest room, I said, walking past him. We didn't really have a guest room. It was a tiny den with a pull-out sofa that had a metal bar that dug into your back. Zara, stop, please. Let's just go to sleep. We can talk in the morning. There is nothing to talk about, I said. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I went into the den and shut the door. I didn't lock it. The lock was broken. But I dragged the heavy desk chair in front of it. I lay down on the lumpy mattress in the dark. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, terrifying clarity. My marriage had ended 10 minutes ago in the kitchen. Now I was just a roommate with a legal contract. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I waited until Kendrick left. He slunk out without saying goodbye, looking like a beaten dog, and then I got in my car. I drove 40 minutes to the suburbs, to a neat brick house with a manicured lawn, my parents' house. My father, David, was sitting at the kitchen table reading the paper. He was a retired structural engineer. He was a man of few words, precise calculations, and absolute absolutes. Zara? Mom looked up from the stove, surprised. Is everything okay? You look pale. I sat down at the table. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't start with small talk. I need help, I said. Kendrick's mother stole the inheritance, all of it. My mother dropped the spatula. It clattered against the stovetop. My father slowly folded his newspaper. He took off his reading glasses and placed them on the table. He looked at me with eyes that were dark and focused. Start from the beginning, he said. Do not leave out the numbers. I told them everything. The cancer lie, the pressure, the transfer, the grocery store, the recording, Kendrick's refusal to act. When I finished, the kitchen was silent. My mother was crying softly, her hand over her mouth. My father didn't cry. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the oak tree in the yard. $700,000, he said quietly. Yes. And the boy, Kendrick, he refuses to pursue legal action? He says it will bankrupt her. My father turned around. His face was a mask of cold fury. It was a look I had never seen directed at me, and it was terrifying. "Show me the evidence," he commanded. I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the screenshots. He listened to the recording. He examined the photo of the IOU. "This is admissible," he said, more to himself than to me. "The IOU is valid. The recording establishes intent and fraud." "What do I do, Dad?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I have no money for a lawyer. Kendrick controls the joint accounts." "You don't need a lawyer yet," my father said, sliding the phone back to me. "You need leverage. A lawyer takes years. We need to apply pressure that she cannot ignore." "How?" "We make the cost of keeping the money higher than the cost of returning it," he said. A grim, tight smile touched his lips. "She cares about her image, doesn't she? The church lady? The pillar of the community? It's all she cares about." "Good," David said. "Then that is where we strike." I stayed at my parents' for dinner, dreading the return to the apartment. When I finally walked back into my home at 9 p.m., the air was thick with tension. Kendrick was sitting on the sofa. He looked up when I entered. "Where were you?" he asked. I was worried. "I was with my parents," I said, hanging up my coat. He flinched. "Did you tell them?" "Of course I told them. It was their mother's money, Kendrick." He put his head in his hands. "Great. Now they hate me." "They are disappointed," I corrected him. "Hate takes too much energy." He sighed, reaching for a heavy, cream-colored envelope on the coffee table. He held it out to me. "This came today," he mumbled. I took it. It was heavy cardstock, textured, expensive. I opened it. Gold foil lettering shimmered under the living room light. "You are cordially invited to the 55th birthday celebration of Angela Dubois. Venue, the Grand Magnolia Ballroom, Buckhead. Date, Saturday, November 20th. Dress code, black tie. Dinner and dancing to follow." I stared at the invitation, the Grand Magnolia. I knew that venue. It cost $5,000 just to unlock the doors. The catering was another 100 ahead. "She is throwing a party," I said, my voice vibrating. "She owes us $700,000. She claims she is destitute, and she is throwing a black tie gala at the Grand Magnolia?" "She put down the deposit months ago," Kendrick mumbled, looking at the floor. "Before everything. She can't get it back." "She could cancel the catering," I shouted. "She could sell the dress she's going to wear. She could have a potluck in her backyard and give us the $5,000. "She can't cancel, Zara. Everyone is invited. The pastor, her old boss, the whole family. It would be humiliating." "Humiliating." I laughed, tossing the invitation onto the table. "She is dancing on the grave of our financial future, and you are worried about her humiliation." "Are you going?" he asked, watching me warily. "To the party?" I looked at him. "You want me to go celebrate the woman who robbed me?" "If you don't go, people will talk," Kendrick said weakly. "It will look weird, just for appearances. Please? For me?" I looked at the invitation again. Gold foil, lies wrapped in luxury. "I'll think about it," I said. I called my father from the bathroom 5 minutes later, the shower running to mask my voice. "She's having a party," I whispered. "A birthday gala next Saturday." "Perfect," my father said instantly. "Perfect. Dad, it's disgusting. She's spending thousands on champagne while I'm eating ramen." "It's perfect because she will have an audience," David said. His voice was sharp, calculating. "Who will be there?" "Everyone. Her church friends. Her family. Kendrick said the pastor is coming." "Excellent," David said. "You are going to that party, Zara, and we are coming with you. You want to go? We will drive separately. You go with Kendrick. Play the role of the dutiful wife. Let her feel safe. Let her think she has gotten away with it." "And then what?" "And then," David said, "we wait for her to make a speech. Narcissists always make speeches. And when she is standing there, telling everyone how wonderful she is, that is when you ask the question." "What question?" You ask her when she is paying you back, he said, loudly, in front of the pastor, in front of the family. Dad, that's a nuclear option. She pressed the buttons, Zara, my father said firmly. She nuked your life in secret. You are simply showing everyone the radiation. Do you have the courage to do this? I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked tired. I looked used. But under the dark circles, I saw a spark of something new. Yes, I said, I'll do it. The next 5 days were a master class in acting. I moved back into the bedroom, though I slept on the very edge of the mattress, my back to Kendrick. I stopped asking about the money. I stopped screaming. Kendrick interpreted my silence as submission. He thought he had won. He thought I had accepted my role as the martyr who would carry his mother's sins. I'm glad you're calming down, he said on Thursday night, watching me iron a dress. Mom is really excited to see you. She thinks we can put this behind us. I'm sure she does, I said, smoothing a wrinkle in the dark gray fabric. That dress is a little somber, isn't it? He asked, frowning. It looks like something you'd wear to a funeral. It was a high-necked, long-sleeved charcoal dress. It was severe. It was authoritative. It was exactly what I wanted. It's elegant, I said, and it fits the mood. Well, maybe wear some bright jewelry, he suggested. Mom likes sparkle. I didn't answer. I wasn't dressing for Mom. I was dressing for war. On Saturday morning, the day of the party, I woke up with a calm heart. The fear was gone. The hesitation was gone. I checked my phone, a text from Dad. We are in position. Bring the documents. I went to my closet and pulled out a small, sleek black clutch. Inside, I placed my phone and folded copies of the screenshots and the IOU. Kendrick walked in, adjusting his bow tie. You ready, babe? We should get there early for photos. I looked at him. He looked handsome in his tuxedo. A year ago, I would have looked at him with love. Now, I just saw an accessory to a crime. I'm ready, I said, snapping the clutch shut. Let's go have a great time, he said, smiling his naive, denial-filled smile. Yes, I said, walking past him. Let's make it a night to remember. The Grand Magnolia Ballroom smelled of expensive lilies and old money. We walked in through the double mahogany doors, and the first thing I saw was a towering ice sculpture of a swan. A swan. It's beautiful, isn't it? Kendrick whispered, squeezing my arm nervously. She really went all out. She sure did, I said, my voice flat. I was calculating the cost. The ice sculpture alone was probably $500. That was half a transmission repair. We checked our coats. I smoothed down my charcoal dress. It stood out against the sea of sequins and bright taffeta. I looked like a dark storm cloud rolling into a summer picnic. Smile, please, Kendrick hissed as we approached the main room. People are looking. Let them look, I said. We walked into the main hall. There were about 50 guests milling around round tables covered in white linen. A string quartet was playing Vivaldi in the corner. Waiters in white gloves were passing around trays of shrimp cocktail. And there she was, Angela. She was wearing a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk with silver beading. She had a diamond necklace that glittered under the chandelier. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She looked radiant. She looked rich. She spotted us, and her face lit up with a performance-ready smile. She floated over, holding a champagne flute. Kendrick, Zara! She opened her arms wide. My babies, you made it! She pulled Kendrick into a hug, kissing both his cheeks. Then she turned to me. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, her eyes flicking over my severe dress. But she recovered quickly. Zara, she cooed, leaning in for an air kiss. So serious today, but I'm so glad you came. It means the world to me that we can be a family. Happy birthday, Angela, I said. I didn't lean in. I stood rigid. Thank you, darling, she beamed, oblivious or choosing to be. Go find your seats. We're about to serve the salad. We walked toward the front of the room. Kendrick steered me toward table 2, which was right next to the head table. "Here we are," he said, pulling out a chair. "Right next to Mom." I stopped. I looked at the name card. Zara Dubois. Then I looked across the room. At table 9, near the back, my parents were sitting. My father, David, was wearing his charcoal suit, looking like a judge waiting for the bailiff. My mother was next to him, clutching her purse. "I'm not sitting here," I said. Kendrick froze, the chair half pulled. "What? This is the family table." "I'm sitting with my parents," I said. "Zara, don't start," Kendrick pleaded, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "Mom wants us close. It will look rude if you sit in the back." "I don't care," I said. "You sit here. Hold her hand. I'm going to sit with the people who didn't steal from me." I turned on my heel and walked away before he could argue. I wove through the tables, ignoring the curious glances. I pulled out the chair next to my father. "You're late," David said, not looking up from his water glass. "Traffic," I said, placing my black clutch on the table. "Is everything ready?" "Ready and waiting," he said. He tapped the breast pocket of his jacket. "I have the copies." The waiter poured me a glass of water. I took a sip. My hands were perfectly steady. I looked toward the front of the room. Kendrick was sitting alone at table 2, looking miserable. Angela was working the room, laughing, touching arms, accepting gifts. She had no idea. 40 minutes passed. The salad was cleared. The main course, filet mignon, was served. I cut into the meat. It was tender, cooked perfectly medium rare. I wondered if my $700,000 paid for this specific cow. The music faded. The room quieted down. A man in a tuxedo tapped a spoon against his glass. "Attention, everyone," he announced. "A few words from the birthday girl." Angela stood up at the head table. She beamed, basking in the applause. She adjusted the microphone stand. "Oh, stop, stop," she laughed, waving a hand modestly. "You are too kind." She waited for the silence to become absolute. 55 years, she began, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "It sounds like a long time, but looking around this room, seeing all your beautiful faces, it feels like a blink of an eye." The guest smiled. Someone shouted, "You look 25, Angie." "You're a flatterer, Robert," she giggled, then grew serious. "You know, life hasn't always been easy. I raised a son on my own. I worked double shifts. I sacrificed." She paused for effect. She looked over at Kendrick, who offered a weak smile. "But that is what family does," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "We sacrifice. We give of ourselves. We give until it hurts, because love is the most important currency we have. I have always tried to live by that, to be a giver, not a taker." I felt the bile rise in my throat. A giver. "I look at my legacy," Angela said, sweeping her arm across the room, "and I feel blessed. I have my health, I have my friends, and I have my integrity." My father kicked me gently under the table. "Now." I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the parquet floor. The sound echoed in the silent room. Heads turned. Angela looked over, surprised. She held the microphone frozen halfway to her mouth. "Zara," she said, blinking, "did you want to add a toast?" I didn't smile. I didn't pick up a glass. I projected my voice, making sure it carried to the back corners of the room. "Yes, Angela," I said. "I have a question." The room went deadly silent. You could hear the ice melting in the swan sculpture. "I was wondering," I said, enunciating every syllable, "when are you going to give me back my $700,000? For 3 seconds, nobody moved. It was as if time had stopped. Angela's face went white, then red, then a sickly shade of gray. "Excuse me," she squeaked, the microphone picking up the tremor in her voice. "The $700,000, I repeated. "The money you borrowed 3 months ago to save your dying cousin Sabrina. The money for the emergency surgery in Switzerland. When are you paying it back?" A gasp rippled through the room. A woman at the next table dropped her fork. Kendrick jumped up, knocking his chair over. "Zara, sit down, stop this." "No," I said, not looking at him. I kept my eyes locked on Angela. She said she values integrity. She said she is a giver. So I am asking, where is the money, Angela? How is Sabrina doing? This is inappropriate, Angela stammered, looking around wildly for an exit. "We will discuss this in private." "We tried that," I said. "For 3 months. You didn't answer." "She is drunk," Angela shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She is hysterical. Someone get her out of here." 2 waiters took a hesitant step toward me. My father stood up. He didn't look like a drunk relative. He looked like an executioner. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. "She is not drunk," David said. His voice was deep, booming. "And she is not lying." He walked toward the center of the room. The guests parted for him like the Red Sea. "I have here," David announced, holding up a sheet of paper, a promissory note signed by Angela Dubois, dated October 2nd, acknowledging a loan of $700,000, due for repayment on December 2nd. He turned to the nearest table and placed the paper in front of the pastor. "Reverend, would you verify the signature?" The Reverend looked terrified, but he looked. He nodded slowly. "And here," David continued, "are the text messages." He held up the enlarged screenshots, where Angela claims the money is for a life-saving operation. "Stop it!" Angela shrieked. "Security!" "And finally," David said, pulling out his phone. He held it up to the microphone stand that Angela had abandoned. "A recording from 4 days ago." He pressed play. Angela's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "It was a metaphor. Poverty is a cancer. I was trying to cure our poverty." The crowd murmured. People were standing up now. He spent it on the setup, the crypto farm. "I can't give you what I don't have." David stopped the recording. He looked at the crowd. "There was no cancer," David said. "There was no cousin Sabrina. There was only a failed crypto mining scheme run by her brother, Julian." Everyone turned to look at Julian, who was sitting at table 4. He was trying to slide under the tablecloth. "This woman," David pointed at Angela, "manipulated her son and daughter-in-law into giving up their life savings, and tonight she is feeding you filet mignon with their money." The room exploded. It wasn't a party anymore. It was a riot of whispers and accusations. "Is that true, Angie?" a woman in a red hat shouted. "You told me you were broke," another man yelled. Angela was sobbing, clutching the edge of the head table. She looked small. She looked old. The glamour was gone, peeled away to reveal the rot underneath. "I wanted to pay it back," she wailed. "I intended to." Kendrick was standing next to her, looking like a man who had been shelled. He looked at me, his eyes filled with betrayal. "How could you?" he mouthed across the room. "In front of everyone?" I looked at him. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just exhaustion. "You left me no choice," I said loud enough for him to hear. "You chose her. I chose the truth." I picked up my clutch. I turned to my father. "Let's go," I said. David nodded. He placed the stack of evidence on the guest book table near the exit. "Just in case anyone wants to read the details," he said. We walked out. As we reached the double doors, I looked back. Angela was slumped in a chair, her face buried in her hands. The guests were leaving, abandoning the expensive food. The ice swan was dripping water onto the floor, a slow, steady puddle forming around the base. Kendrick was standing alone in the center of the chaos, looking at the door, watching his wife walk out of his life. I pushed the mahogany door open and stepped out into the cool night air. I took a deep breath. It tasted like rain. It tasted like freedom. The divorce was finalized last Tuesday. It turns out that when your husband facilitates a six-figure fraud against you, the judge is pretty sympathetic regarding the division of assets. I didn't get the condo with the heated floors. That dream is gone. But I did get my money back. The Monday after the red wedding, as my dad calls the birthday party, Angela put her house on the market. The shame was too much. She couldn't show her face at church, at the grocery store, anywhere. The entire community knew she was a predator. She sold her house in a fire sale to a We Buy Ugly Houses company. She liquidated her 401k. She sold the jewelry. It took 6 weeks, but a wire transfer hit my account for $700,000. Not a penny more, not a penny less. I live in a small studio apartment now. It's quiet. The walls are white. I have a single succulent on the windowsill. I saw Kendrick once, at the lawyer's office to sign the final decree. He looked terrible. He told me he was living in a rented room in Julian's basement because he couldn't afford an apartment on his own. He asked if I ever missed him. I looked at him, and I honestly searched my heart for an answer. I miss who I thought you were, I told him. I signed the paper, capped my pen, and walked out to my car. The Honda's transmission is fixed now. It runs smooth. I have $700,000 in the bank. I'm looking at houses again, just for me. And this time, I'm changing the locks. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.